Hey, good morning and welcome everybody. Thanks for taking time out on this sunny day to give us your thoughts on how we move forward on making sure NVU is here to stay. We all know how important NVU is to our community, our economy, and providing access to higher education. Thank you for being part of this discussion. We're glad that the board did not take action on the proposal by the chancellor and to hold off until we can find a path forward. I'd like to introduce my colleagues who are joining us today, Representative Matt Hill, Lucy Rogers, and Dylan Giambatista, and Senator Rich Westman. As you know, the legislature is currently working remotely and only debating and passing legislation directly related to COVID. We are likely to pass a short-term budget and adjourn until August. In the meantime, the House and Senate leadership will be working to find ways to move forward and expect action when we return. I would like to start by having Representative Dylan Giambatista, who serves on the Board of Trustees, to say a few words. Dylan, would you like to say a few words for us today?
Yeah, thanks so much, Dan. And thank you to the entire delegation, Matt Hill, Lucy Rogers, Rich Westman. You're very fortunate in Lamoille County. These are people who care really deeply for their communities, who have a lot of influence in the process, I'd say, and have demonstrated through this process, I think, a really good understanding of the levers to pull in the legislative setting to ensure that people are heard. So I want you to know how much respect I have for folks on the ground there in Lamoille County. I am an alum of both the Community College of Vermont and Johnson, and I have a lot of respect for the faculty there, the staff. So I'm not here today to speak as a board member, but in the House I serve on the Education Committee, and we've had a pretty lengthy discussion about higher education, the future of higher education, some of the challenges rural states are facing with post-secondary institutions. And I just want to let you know that as a member of that committee, who is an alum of the system, I recognize how important these institutions are, not just for helping our students attain the skills they need to reach their goals, but also for the communities around them. I have many fond memories of going down on Main Street in Johnson, talking to folks there, had classes with members of the select board. All this is to say that it's something that's near and dear to me. And just as we move forward, I want you to know I'm happy to listen, to chat. If you ever want to get in touch, my phone number, my email, everything's on the website. So please reach out and do know that I'm talking with your delegation. And I'm sure they will let me know if you have any ideas. So thank you for having me. I'm mainly here to listen. If anyone has any questions, I'll take them, but I just want you to know I'm listening. Thanks.
Hey, and thank you, Dylan. Great to have you here. Appreciate it. And Lucy, Rich, Matt, anything you'd like to add before we get started?
I can chime in quickly. Yeah, I pretty much would echo what Dan said. I think Rich, Matt, Dan, and I have all been working nonstop since a week ago from yesterday when all of the State College information started coming out. And I think for me, there's kind of two main goals I have in the immediate future. There's obviously long-term goals, but in the immediate future, the first goal is really working within the legislature to talk to our colleagues and secure funding for the state colleges, first for the short term and then for the long term. And then the second goal, personal goal I have, is to ensure that at every step along the way of the process going forward, we're hearing community input, because I think the outpouring of ideas from our community so far has really demonstrated how well equipped we are to have visions for the future of the state college system and to ensure that those voices are being heard and included. And I think this meeting today is a great first step for that.
Thank you, Lucy. Rich or Matt, would you like to say a few words before we get started?
Yeah, sure. I'll just say that, even though this was kind of thrust upon us on last Friday, 2 Fridays ago, I guess now, the issue has been ongoing, and there's a lot of ideas already floating out there about how to handle the state college system in general, and so that work has been going on for quite a while, and it's got pushed into high gear at this point, and so we're really looking for hopefully crowdsourcing and getting any new idea that can be folded in. It would be extremely helpful, and so thank you all for participating.
Yeah, I'd just like to say thank you all for participating today. This is has brought to a head that we all have to do better. The state has to do better at funding, and with a changing world and with Southern New Hampshire University basically taking a lot of students away from all of us. There's a lot of room for us all to do better, and I hope we do. Johnson and Northern Vermont University is extremely important to me. I just say when I graduated in a long time ago now, in 1982, my life wouldn't have been what it is today without the school. And my first alumni event that I went with my grandmother, who had graduated in 1932, and it saved her life too. So I'm looking forward to ideas to help us all do better.
Great, thank you. And just, I graduated in '99. Matt, when did you graduate?
I finished finally in 2013.
Right on. Okay, so Dylan, when did you graduate?
I actually walked down the aisle, for lack of a better term, with Matt. So I'm a 2013 alum. Yeah.
Super. All right. So, all right. So the format is, we have this list we sent out, and, roughly 3 minutes apiece. There'll be time for clarifying questions if we have any, and just looking forward to hearing your ideas. This is great that you took out some time to talk to us about this. And there's also, I do want to mention that on the NVU page, there's a place where you can, if something comes up, you have another idea, apart from sending it to any of us, we'd love to hear it. You can also put it right on the NVU page, and just trying to crowdsource these ideas. And I've had some people come up with some pretty good ones. I'm sure we'll hear some today. So we might as well get started. First up is Newton Wells. Newton, thanks for joining us today.
Hey, Dan, thank you for working with all the rest of these guys to put this together. It's like I think Dylan was saying earlier, I feel like we have such an incredibly dedicated group of legislators here, and thank you for all the work that you do. I know that this is not a new idea. This is something that people have been saying for a long time, that we need to get more students interested in our state colleges. But I think this emphasizes the need to put a renewed emphasis on this. And, I know that when I was in school, I think in high school, and I went to Stowe High School, and, there were not that many students that ended up going to the state colleges. Most of them ended up going out of state. Now, I think, of course, in a wealthy community, you're probably going to see a higher number go outside the state for college. But I think in any situation, there's a percentage that with the proper information and counseling, we can pull some of those. And if we start, if we get a few here and a few there, every little bit helps. It's like running a business. You got to put a lot of different marketing things out there in order to increase your numbers one little bit at a time, and every little bit helps. There's a lot of good reasons why people should stay here. It's not just, so I mentioned on Wednesday, I think it was, the importance of supporting our local economy. And that can be a tough message to drive home to a high school student, who's thinking about a lot of other things in their college choices. And I know that when I was 17 years old, supporting the local economy really was a little bit vague to me. But I'm sure there are others who were who are probably more engaged in that than me at the time. But so that's one reason, and there's many others. I was discussing this with a friend of mine yesterday, and she mentioned that that no matter where you go, you get what you put in. And we used to talk about this a lot at Johnson State among my friends. We were discussing the fact that that, you know, no matter where you choose to go to college, you get back the amount of effort that you put into it. And if you do that at a state college, you can get a whole lot more bang for your buck. Speaking of bang for the buck, the relative debt load that one gets at a state school versus going outside the state, you know, it's a huge difference. And I think that really needs to be emphasized. I talked to a prospective employee of mine who had come in for an interview, and this was like a few years back. And he was a Craftsbury student and was about to graduate and head off to 4 years at the University of Colorado or something like that. And he was looking at a $200,000 investment in a bachelor's degree. And I had to tell him, I'm like, you know, that's going to be a massive, massive debt load when you're done. And it's going to impact your ability to buy a house and follow a lot of other dreams that you're going to want to do after you graduate. And, you know, I think somebody needs to come forth and explain this stuff and really drive the point home, not just to students, but the parents as well, because of course, parents have a lot of influence. And there's a lot of parents who are pushing the out-of-state schools. And I think we can, and of course, then there's the guidance counselors too. And that's another problem that should be addressed. But I think if we put some effort into all these things, we can increase the number of Vermont students who stay here. And of course, I realize that Vermont students are subsidized, and although not as much as they should be. And I've always, at least understood from my perspective, it seemed like the out-of-state students were definitely paying more and bringing more money into the coffers. And I've always heard that the state colleges sort of existed on those out-of-state students. So thankfully they're there. But if we can, you know, it would be difficult. It would be more difficult to bring in more out-of-state students, I think. But our in-state students are here, and we can easily get to them. And I think we need to push this idea of getting people to stay in state. And if, you know, even if we could assemble a task force of local volunteers, I've read somewhere that at least half of Lamoille County residents attended Johnson State. Am I wrong on that? Does anybody know?
I'm not sure the numbers, but hey, Newt, we got to wrap it up.
Okay.
We got
sorry.
Appreciate the input. It was awesome.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's 70-30 in-state versus out-of-state, somewhere in there.
Okay. Well, I was a little wordy, but I want to say I'd be happy to volunteer to talk to students who are you know, in high school at that age where they're making the decision, and if we could round up other people in the community who would be willing to do the same, I think that would help. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Newt. Appreciate the input. So next up we have Molly. Good morning, Molly. Are you there?
No, Molly, Dan. The next one is Daniel. Yep.
Okay. Good morning, Daniel. Welcome.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can. Great.
Okay. Can you see me? That's the bigger question. My camera, it's not the best.
Not very well.
I'm joining you from the shadows, and I have every light on in my kitchen.
Okay. Well, we can hear you.
So
we're interested in what you have to say for sure.
Well, yeah, again, thanks for doing this. I've been following this super closely ever since, you know, the announcement last Friday. And I'm joining right now from Ferrisburg, but I am a son of Johnson. Grew up on the Hill with Matt Hill and Kyle. So they were neighbors growing up, and Johnson's always been the center of the universe for me. So I've been following this pretty closely. And thanks for doing this. But so a couple ideas, just to use the 3 minutes here. I worked for about 10 years in proposal development on USAID funded development projects worldwide, lesser developed countries, just kind of, you know, water supply, sanitation, rural agriculture, democracy initiatives, that kind of thing. Totally different field, but a lot of just kind of proposal work. And a lot of that comes through, you know, some of the work on those development projects come through partnerships. And where I'm going with this is I'm kind of wondering, and this is maybe outside of the legislative sphere and maybe more of just like additional funding that the campus can get via partnerships. You know, just looking to the home community, I don't know if there are like accredited college courses that could be offered via partnerships, and then those partnerships are what you could then leverage to get additional funding. You know, look at something like the arts. You know, you have the Vermont Studio Center right there. If you had partnership programs that offer accredited courses and then use that to leverage funding through maybe like the endowment of the arts, or look at some of the organic farming in the area. If you have accredited programs for you know, agriculture programs, courses, and then use that to leverage funding through like the USDA or something. And I don't know the specifics on that right now without looking to see what kind of RFPs might be out there. But I would imagine that there would be something like that, just, you know, and you're killing multiple birds with one stone. Not that I'm an advocate for killing birds with stones, but that's the only saying I can think of. So it just seems like there might be some other creative things that could be done in terms of partnerships with the home community. It would be a way to reach out to community groups to work with the campus and offer accredited programs and get additional funding for the campus.
It's actually a good idea. So work with state agencies, federal agencies, and you know, be their kind of educational arm and try to work. Is that what basically you're?
Yeah, along those lines. And you know, I've only really had like 3 or 4 days
not a bad idea
about that, so I don't know the what those opportunities out there might look like specifically, but there's usually some kind of funding mechanisms page out there, like government funding program, like RFP, like a consolidated list of RFPs that the government's putting out. No doubt. There's usually you know, there's something to look out there, I think, and that might be a way to just kind of tie a lot of pieces together.
Wow, great. Thank you so much. Appreciate that. You know, definitely that workforce development is, if we can bring some of those dollars in, that's going to be helpful in making sure we have the revenue we need to keep open, for sure.
Well,
So
that was really it in terms of, you know, things that I had. I mean, Newton's ideas, you know, if there were maybe like a debt relief thing for students who choose to work in the state after graduation, or a portion of debt, you know, whatever that might look like. But like if somebody chooses to work in the state after graduation rather than leaving and working in another state, that would keep students in. Okay,
thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Hey, thanks.
Hey, next up we have Nat. Welcome, Nat. Thanks for being here today.
Thanks, and it's great to be here, and thanks to our local legislators. Really appreciate you guys. Got a lot to throw against the wall here. This is a bunch of ideas. I'm just going to throw them all out. Rapid fire. The first is suggested as an idea for all of us, all 21 of us in this room. This is an election year. Make state college funding an issue in every state and local election. Number 2, change the narrative. Jeb's narrative is that these schools are failing and he's wrong by every benchmark. Talk to President Collins. She has the receipts. 3, host gubernatorial debates at Dibden and Alexander Twilight. Televised live with statewide media. Make sure the media address NVU and VTC in the election. Be really great to see gubernatorial debates in our theaters on campus, not just in a classroom somewhere. No, I mean, those, moving on. Number 4, back to listen to President Collins and her staff. A lot of these ideas that I hear coming up, President Collins has been doing and finding great success with, and people aren't hearing it. Someone asked this past week, Jeb, they asked him why NVU has not done more recruiting in other states, and he couldn't answer that. And the fact is that Dr. Collins has increased out-of-state recruiting. She's conducted national demographic studies identifying areas of the country with a high number of junior and senior high schoolers, and she's targeted those markets. And she's had a lot of success with that, and the success stories are not coming out. Jeb had no idea. He couldn't answer that question. But if people would listen to President Collins, they'll find out she has met every benchmark that's been set before her. The Board of Trustees needs to know this. The legislature needs to know this. And we need a chancellor that knows that. Number 5, of course, the legislature must identify a long-term funding source. All of the programs, all of the enduring government programs have a funding source, a designated funding source. Pilot has the local option tax. Transportation has gas tax. Education has property tax. We need a funding source, whether it's pot, liquor, rooms and meals, highway mileage, sales tax. I don't know. All of those have pluses and minuses. But yes, this is worth raising taxes for. Skip on to my number 7, and this has been mentioned, move CCV to the Johnson campus, but there are a lot of state office buildings, rentals in Morrisville. CCV, the Health Department, Department of Family and Department of Children and Families, Department of Disabilities, Aging and Independent Living, Family Services, all of these rent offices in Morrisville, and use the synergies of the campus, bring them in. In that vein, this town lacks a doctor. We have lost our Dr. Rogers and loved him, but it's been a huge gap without him, and we've been trying desperately to get a medical clinic here. If free or low rent space up there for a year or two while it gains some traction, while he sets up, he or she sets up, that would be, I think, a really great partnership with Cheslov. And what else do I have here? Oh, the VEGI incentive programs. Millions of dollars are spent on this, and Auditor Doug Hoffer has shown that there is no proven return on investment. State colleges do have a proven return on investment. I think it's pretty obvious state colleges are more important than corporate tax giveaways. So look into those millions of dollars being given out in those VEGI incentive programs. And
those are the Move to Vermont, right? The pay to move to Vermont.
No, that's only part of it. But it's the veggie. In the legislature, it's called the veggie fund.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
and they are used to subsidize wages for employees, to add jobs. For businesses to add jobs, you can get the wages can be subsidized if you add so many jobs at a certain level, blah, 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 blah. And the problem, it has been identified as an issue. What to do about it, the legislature hasn't acted on it yet. But the fact of the matter is there's not many jobs being added. But now you're right, it's not easy to prove, and it's employers say it's helpful, but that's the only proof that they can offer. So point well taken.
Yeah, I'll send you the study that Hoffer did. It's pretty illuminating. Those are my ideas. I really appreciate the time.
All right. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Those are some, you put some thought into that. Can definitely tell. Thank you. Keep up the work. Next we have Beth. Beth, thanks for joining us this morning.
Thanks for letting me talk to you and join you. I'm Beth Welch and I live in Cambridge. I love everything I'm hearing this morning. It's great. I've worked at Northern Vermont University in Johnson for about 6 years as the Director of Career Development. And I've also served in the Vermont State College's United Professionals Staff Union, currently as Johnson's chapter chair, and in the past as the president of the union for all of our campuses. And that's given me the good fortune to be able to visit our different campuses and see that each one is so important to their community and their young people, their faculty, staff, alums. NVU Johnson is an economic engine for Lamoille County, and I think you all know that. Our students have served thousands and thousands of hours at internships throughout our communities in Laraway and Smuggler's Notch and Lamoille County Mental Health and the Restorative Justice Center. And our education students are in classrooms all over the state. And they graduate with this wonderful teacher endorsement in elementary education and special education. Our graduates continue to work in these institutions and organizations. Many of them came from out of state and are staying here to enrich our communities. And one thing that I learned when I attended the budget hearing in Morrisville on February 10th is that many of these organizations actually need more of our graduates, not less. They are screaming for more employees to serve our communities, and they're having a hard time finding them. What Vermont does great is we graduate our high school seniors. 91% of Vermont's high schoolers graduate, and that leads the United States, but only about 42% go on to college, and we are falling way behind it. By my calculations, that puts us 46th out of 50 states as far as going on to college. And I'm convinced that more high school graduates would go to college in Vermont if the state of Vermont lived up to the promise of providing appropriations that were whole or substantial. And we would be able to lower our tuition. So I know that the population of college days, traditionally college age students, is shrinking, but we're not accessing as many college age students as we could be if we had lower tuition. Those who stay in Vermont are saddled with extraordinary student debt, but a lot of them leave the state and stay out of state. And our tuitions are high because our state appropriations are low. I believe the central office needs to be dispersed around our state college campuses. The fact that we're paying big bucks for that space in Montpelier, I think, has not benefited us and has actually just, it's separated the folks that live there from our campuses and from the life of the colleges. And I think they need to be back in the colleges. But my main proposal is that the state of Vermont live up to its promise and substantially fund the Vermont State Colleges system. Over the year, I've watched as we've made cuts. We haven't filled positions. We've changed what we do and tried to be more efficient. And Nat was right. The president of Northern Vermont University has been amazing, and she has been meeting all those goals that she was given. And to have the chancellor suggest that these two campuses be closed was just unbelievable. So I'd like to suggest that a community be created that includes students, faculty, staff, administrators, alumni, community members, and our local legislators to discuss the changes that our institutions need and determine our plans going forward. It's going to take a lot of time and money. But if the state continues to neglect our public institutions, the decision that they're making is to reduce the opportunities for our young people to access education within the state and to abandon our communities. Vermont, we need our young people and we need a thriving economy. And we're going to lose both if we don't provide substantial appropriations and work together to make it better. I'm happy to share any of my sources that you'd like to see, but I really appreciate you listening. And I will do everything I can to keep all of our campuses open. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Beth. Appreciate your input. There, there also just want to mention out there on the NVU page, there is a place for people who are listening if they want to enter their own ideas. And then, of course, you can reach out to any of us, or the legislators that are here, or, and the trustees. So I really appreciate you taking the time to join us this morning. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up, we have Ray. Ray,
yes,
thanks for joining
yes.
us this morning.
Yeah, thank you very much for everyone and for all that you do. I'll say I wasn't really planning on presenting, but I have at least gathered some thoughts here. And so let me just tell you a bit about myself. I live in Cambridge. I grew up not far from here in the Adirondacks of New York. So in a sense, I don't feel like I ever really left home. This is home just as is, across the lake to me. And just that whole concept right there of having a connection and fostering it with another community is something I think we need to emphasize in our education system. But that's neither here nor there. But so when I first moved here, I worked at IBM. I worked for Teradyne. I worked at Fairbanks Scales in St. Johnsbury. I worked for Dynapower in southern South Burlington. So very technical fields that I've been involved in. And now I work for an international company, ABB. They're Swiss-based and Swedish-based. They're worldwide. And when I heard that this was happening, I sent a note to my high level management and said, will you help us, give our kids some hope and foster, foster hope and within, and where I really see a huge need in what I do out in the field is in safety. And, until all of this happened, I thought PPE was only involved in my field. There's a constant, the company that I work for, they don't want to be liable for anyone. I mean, that's the bottom line. So they're so interested in someone that emphasizes safety, emphasizes health and safety. If we do that in our education system, the companies are going to flock to us. They're going to say, wow, look at Vermont. They're doing it. And we have such an opportunity to do that here. I might even bring up Smuggler's Notch Resort. I had this concept about safety, how, when you're at the bottom of the hill and you're on the, what is it? The carpet, the magic carpet. Yeah. You don't need much safety there. You're not going to get hurt. But if you go up, a mountain is such a perfect illustration of the proper PPE that you need, depending on what level you're at. If if you don't go up to Sterling unless you've had proper training and proper health and safety training. So, there's such an opportunity for Vermont to emphasize that. And I'll just mention also that, agricultural and hospitality, those four: agricultural, engineering, hospitality, health, and safety. If we concentrate on those, companies are going to say, wow, we want people from Vermont, and people are going to want to go to Vermont. I can go on and on, but let me just emphasize one more thing. I look at all of our communities that, for instance, Jeffersonville and Johnson, they're old mill towns, right? That's what they are. So how can we connect these communities? And, I see the projects that I work on, and even, you might see that Dynapower, they're building these systems within the walls of their complex. What if we built systems within the communities? And, and one community had a responsibility for this, and I'm getting more in detail of what I do. I work in energy storage and grid related activities. So, what if these communities were connected and they all had a responsibility in building these blocks that, that might be energy storage, they might be other means of energy, distributed energy resources, I'll call them. I'm sure I've gone over now, but I just want to thank you all again.
Thank you, Ray. Really appreciate your input. You raised some really good points, and it's great to have you here today. I think we'll definitely figure this out as we move forward, and as long as we can keep people engaged. So thank you.
Thank you.
Next up is Joy. Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you for joining us this morning. Appreciate you being here.
Thanks for having me. So yeah, I'm Joy LaHoulier. I have a farm right here in Johnson, and so business owner, farmer, not somebody that knows a whole lot about how to get a college back in the right area of things, but I talk to a lot of the college folks that come down and shop in the store, and I just wanted to be involved and try to help in any way that I could. To get the word out and that I'm here to help. And all the ideas that I've heard so far were a lot of the ones that I've been hearing and that I like. And I think one thing I would like to say is raising taxes I don't think has ever been something that I thought was a good idea ever. But this situation has definitely brought that really front and center for me, where this is a situation where I think I would be open to that idea. If my husband walked in, he would probably kill me. But I really do feel like if we want all these programs to continue and we expect the state and the legislatures to help us, then we all have to give some more to make sure that these things are viable and they stay together. And I also think that as a community, maybe especially me, have taken a little bit for granted that the college was up there and never thought in a million years that it could go away. So I'm a little bit more committed to making sure that I can do what I can to make that not happen. And I wonder if the mountains, I know the mountains bring the kids here, and that's a big piece for them. If they like to ski, if they like to hike, if they like our outdoor recreational facilities, that's one thing that brings them here. But maybe we need to do a little bit more of making sure that those are accessible and maybe more discounted. I'm not sure. Some of it is already, I think, but I think that would help. And I think making sure that if we do go forward and this college stays open, it's going to be incredibly important to restore some faith that the college is going to stay open, and that the town will be here and the businesses will be here and the mountains will still be here and for them to come to. And I would really like to help if we get to that point of making sure that I help in any way we can to get them to want to still be here and stay here.
Good. Thank you so much. Appreciate you taking the time out to talk to us today. Definitely working with the mountain and yeah, all good stuff. We're definitely all in this together. So looking forward to continuing those conversations. So thank you. Next, we have Deborah. Good morning, Deborah. Thanks for joining us this morning.
Hi, Dan. Is this for me?
This is you. Yeah.
Fountain? Yeah. Okay. I thought I signed up as Deb and not Deb.
Oh, sorry.
No, that's fine. That's totally fine.
We're texting back and forth trying to make sure we get everybody in line next. So sorry about that.
Yeah, no. Excuse me. I got a frog in my throat. So I'll turn myself on, but I'm having an extremely bad hair day. So I wanted to just, I've got several points to make, and I'll just throw them out there.
Sure.
One of the biggest problems I think that has come out of this is the colleges are, Jeb Spalding is a bean counter, and he's always been a bean counter, and not looking at the societal benefits of the colleges, which are huge and should be calculated, frankly. I know there was a study, it's been a while. I used to work at Johnson. I should start with that. I was there almost 8 years, and I left just as the unification was starting because of, frankly, Spalding's rush timetable, and thought I couldn't hold on anymore. But I know there was a study years ago about the economic impact of the college in Johnson, and I think that should certainly be renewed because it's an economic engine, but there are all these other societal benefits as well, like, keeping, studies show that if people go to college, there's less crime, and the cost of keeping someone in prison is 50 to 80 grand a year, I guess, is my understanding in Vermont. So there's all of that. The other thing that came up today, I agreed certainly with Nat and Beth in that regard, but the enrollment challenges are huge. I worked there, like I said, for years, and the competition is huge. But I think the partnership idea, where there are really strong partnerships with businesses, would where students, graduates were funneled directly into employment. And if you could, quote, guarantee placement, that would be huge. Beyond that, so I have some specific ideas. This time we're living in kind of opens up a lot of demand for certain programs, I think. There's going to be a real emphasis on emergency planning and crisis communications, I think, after we get through this. And I know when I was there was talk of having a graduate program in communications, crisis communications, but I think this time would be ripe to really launch some serious programs in that area, because these things we're dealing with aren't going to go away. The other thought I had years ago, which, I'm throwing these things out of the box. You want out of the box ideas? Again, looking at the serious problems we have in this state, societal problems, and how the colleges could be leveraged to help solve them. And there's certainly a need, drug rehab and addiction. And I've always thought that, we have at Johnson, there's a graduate program in counseling and addictions treatment there. And I mean, you could even take conceivably part of the campus and turn it into a real residential drug treatment program that the academic programs feed into and do research, that kind of thing. I don't know how to make that work, but I think that could be real feasible. And that would really solve a problem and also bring in revenue. And then in the summer, there are programs on campus. People rent the space, but they could be used a whole lot more. So even if there was a summer-long wellness, weight loss program, you know, we could develop a spa up at Johnson and compete with the West Coast, you know, on drug rehab and wellness, that kind of thing. Sorry if you hear the saw going. Yeah. And let's see, what else have I got? Beyond that, I guess I would just say I'm really concerned about the leadership at the Chancellor's office. And I think that this whole fiasco that he brought on, I don't see how he should be able to keep his job. There's a real disturbing lack of understanding about how the colleges work, about the recruitment cycle. And his interview on VPR, where he actually said what really turned the tide on everyone's opinion was listening to the comments of people who called in on, or who were in the Zoom meeting, about all of the benefits that the college brings, the economic and cultural and community benefits of the college. And he said, you know, that really changed some minds. And I thought, wow, you know, I can't believe that that's not a big part of the conversation there. So I guess that is it. Other than that, I would say the Chancellor's office needs to close and people there need to be working out of the college campuses.
Yeah.
And that's it for me.
Okay. Thank you so much, Deb, for joining us this morning.
Sure.
Appreciate you've actually raised some really good points. And in fact, Senator Westman wants to say something. So, Senator?
So your first comment about getting somebody to do a real analysis of the economic benefit of the state college system. The Senate has met 3 times over the last week, the full Senate on Zoom. And one of the things that we're really kind of working towards is having Tom Cavett, who's the economist for, one of the 2 economists for the state, do that analysis. He
Great.
did the analysis for Vermont Law when they were in trouble in 2014. And one of the things that he brought up that I think is really interesting and a piece of what he would want to talk about is the demographic issue. We end up being either one of the 2 oldest states in the country, but we have the highest percentage of our population of 18 to 21-year-olds per capita of any state in the country by far.
Interesting.
And if you're one of the oldest places in the country and you rip that out, we even become dramatically older. And if we're going to make an appeal to deal with the demographic issue here, that seems like a really good place to start with students that are already here in that age group. And that's part of what he would study in an overall economic analysis. I thought that was really an interesting piece that would affect what we're thinking about.
Yeah, great.
Yeah, and you definitely reminded me of in our committee, we made a recommendation to the Appropriations Committee, I'm on Human Services, around making sure there was some money for educating drug and alcohol counselors, because that is, you know, to make sure that we can offset some of their educational costs. So I know that was proposed. It'd be interesting to see what the utilization rate was on it, and maybe that's something we should be looking at, you know, as we move forward. So the next person we have up is Sam. Thank you, Sam. Welcome this morning.
Hey, good morning, one and all. I thought I'd take this opportunity to share my screen. Like some others, I've kind of mapped it out and even sent this through that NVU Strong. So I hope that's coming up for you.
Yeah.
Quick little story. I think the Lotto family in a lot of ways represents really the power of VSC on three levels. The first, I did attend Johnson, but my educational journey took me elsewhere, one that I actually regret. My longtime college friends remain my Johnson friends, but I did return and earn my graduate degree there. My lovely wife, Anita, just finished her bachelor's there, and then our son finished his undergraduate. So I think that really speaks to the power of VSC. We all live and work and contribute to the communities here in Lamoille County as well. So with that as a background, I kind of bring to this, and I think that's been spoken to by others, kind of a more global view, because I think part of the issue, and we seem to do this time and time again, and not only in Vermont, but throughout the New England states, we do spread ourselves a little thin. So I think attack where we focus on the core strengths of each campus, look at changes throughout the VSC system, including CCV. Think about, that the diploma does not have to be the only academic end goal. Professional certificates are highly valued in the marketplace. In my industry of technology, I work with many a person who has an associate's and then has stacked many a certificate and is making a great living on contributing back to their community. Consider building in more flexibility to the schedule and programs for our commuter population, because cost is an issue. I think not everybody is looking for that residential experience, but is challenged with sometimes the traditional offerings or the traditional schedule to make it work, because they are also working as well. Continue to strengthen the online learning. Now here's a biggie, because I think we're seeing a lot of success stories. Back in the day when Richie and I and some others were in high school and I got admitted to Johnson, we certainly, I don't know if you did, Richie, but went into the senior slide. We've really stopped that here in Vermont, I think elsewhere, because we have many a senior who is taking courses through the VSC and getting at least a jump start. And let's look at strengthening that. Consider the trimester calendar. Maybe that would make it easier for those with full-time or part-time jobs to manage their course load. Now, this is one I've even talked with amongst my friends who have worked within VST and elsewhere. Consider offering in-state tuition, excluding room and board, to all incoming freshmen, and then consider for all students who maintain a 3.0 average or better, continue to receive in-state tuition. Now, I say that, and it may ruffle a few feathers, I'll say that up front, but the fact of the matter is your high-end students cost less in resources. They are more independent, just demand less. Well, they may demand more from their professors, et cetera, but they're a great investment. Let's look at core strengths. In some levels, we might even want to consider Johnson returning to be the fine teachers college it once was, but let's not throw the baby out with the bathwater. Let's look at core strengths of Johnson, for example, education, environmental studies, fine arts, and the writing program, and certainly the fine graduate program in education and counseling. Continue to strengthen that service learning program, make that a center of excellence, continue to bring in the adult learners, partly because of its central location. Close up the CCV campuses over in Morrisville and up in St. Albans and roll those resources over to Johnson. It almost seems like, and I'll mention this further, a duplication of effort there. Over at NVU Linden, they have that fine outdoor ed program, rec management, atmospheric studies, and look at business management, and then close up the St. Johnsbury campus and once again roll it up to Linden. BTC Randolph, we know they have the fine engineering, computer science, and ag offerings. Keep those. And then the Williston campus, I think we've seen, we can't say enough about this, something that's come forward with COVID-19, a scare that we had, but we seem to have managed. We don't have that many rad techs here in Vermont per capita. So obviously there's a high demand for that. Also continue to strengthen the ties to our tech centers as a way to draw them in to further their education. And I think the reality is, as we head into this recession, we're going to have a lot of displaced workers. Let's really consider them becoming a true hub for retraining of displaced workers. For Castleton, at this point, consider closing up the Rutland campus and do the same. Get your students over to CU. Bricks and mortar, close the dorms to the upperclassmen. Why? You know, many of them aren't there anyway. And then, however, make it mandatory that full-time freshmen and sophomores live on campus unless there's an affordability issue. One reason why I say that is we know retention is an issue nationwide. And we also know the bonds that are formed at that level by living on campus, if you can, are the ones that last and keep you engaged with that institutions. Now, here's something to consider because it's a challenge both at Smugs and elsewhere. Keep the dorms open to house and feed local employees who need seasonal housing. It could be perfect. We've seen one of the unintended consequences of all the Airbnbs. We've lost a critical mass of affordable seasonal housing. This seems like to be a perfect fit. Near and dear to my heart, but Champlain College, as we know, did it years ago because of the, you know, just affordability and sustainability and the spreading thin. We only have so many good athletes that could play at a Division III level in Vermont. And varsity sports at NVU Johnson and VTC, and just make Castleton on one end of the state and Linden on the other. They become the really strong, viable D3 varsity sport campuses, but at the same time, like Champlain, up the ante on your wellness program and club sports. I think this has been mentioned, but continue to really bolster those revenue generating opportunities. Of course, we've got Gibden and like resources to do that. I think some things we've learned from COVID-19, but this has been out there. This chancellor's office, I think, is a true duplication of effort. I think we've got a strong set of presidents. They always have been and always will be. They're just out with the chancellor, with all due respect, form a council of presidents with a rotating chair. And this is counter to what's been mentioned, and I respect it. But I think what we've seen, and I think many of our businesses, I work for a remote company for sure. And believe me, we say, well, they're college kids, but you know, adults, you know, they need care and feeding too in their everyday personal lives. My point of saying that is, why not centralize all the business operations in one place and make your business operations more pop-up, like pop up for financial aid day on a campus, pop up if you're having business issues with your bills on campus. And we know through COVID, people, if my 91-year-old mother-in-law can handle Zoom, I'm sure most college students could handle Zoom sessions dealing with their financial aid or business. So I thank you all, appreciate all you're doing. Quite proud of our Lamoille delegation. No pun intended there, Richie, but I just love looking at them all because except for you and me, there's no gray hair in the bunch. So.
No, don't say that, Sam.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you for your input. Really appreciate it. Would you be able to share that document you had with us? It'd be great to have as a reference. Looks like you put some work into that, and you know, I'd like to reference back to it as we try to figure this out. So thank you.
I would be happy to, Dan. I'll shoot it into your email.
Awesome.
Hey, Sam, I got enough gray hair for both of us. Yeah, I know. I got my COVID hair cut by Anita yesterday, so.
All right. Well, we want to make sure we get everybody in. Thank you so much. Next, we have up Frank. Frank, thanks for joining us this morning. Looking forward to hearing your thoughts on this. Can you hear us, Frank?
I can hear you.
All right, there you are.
You're hearing me now. My picture's really bad.
Frank, do you have the YouTube stream on at the same time?
Excuse me?
We're getting a lot of feedback there. Do you have the YouTube stream on? You know?
Okay, I think it's gone now.
Okay, thank you.
We on?
We're on. Let us know your thoughts.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
A lot of the things that I've been thinking about don't seem to raise money right away for the college, but it's part of some of the things that people have been saying. I think we need a very active advisory committee, and it's more than advisory committees that I've seen in this country. I'm talking about what happens in England with advisors that go into classrooms and work with students, and then they go campus. We need more of that input from good teaching practices. Are we still there?
We're still here, Frank.
All right. Thank you so much. Anything?
I'm sorry, I'm so screwed up here.
All right. Frank, thank you. I appreciate your input on that. So next, we have, who do we have next? We have, hang on, I can pull up my note here. Dolan, can you hear me?
Yes, Anne Marie is next.
Anne Marie. All right. Thank you, Dolan. Anne Marie, welcome.
Thank you. And thank you for doing this. I am a recent transplant, relatively, to Vermont. Came here in December of 2012 after working in higher ed in South Dakota for 24 years at a state college. And it was the big one. It was the land grant college. And I really would not like to see Vermont education go the direction of South Dakota. What has happened there is all of the smaller communities are disappearing. Everybody is being herded into the biggest cities. And on campus, when I taught, my student size went up from 30 student caps to 300 students. And you just cannot do a decent education in introductory courses and take the time that students need, especially if you're teaching anything that requires learning critical thinking, discussions. You know, it simply doesn't work. So I think you have paradise here as far as higher education goes, and I just want to see it continue. So stay local. I've also been listening to the thoughts about the demographics, but I was looking at not so much getting more college age kids as I was thinking about who is the highest demographic in the state. It's seniors, it's older people like myself. And in the Northeast Kingdom, I hear that those who have a higher education are only about 20%, so much less than the 40-something% we heard earlier about the state as a whole. And there are definite problems, I know, with these people doing anything on campus. First of all, they can't afford the tuition. Many of them have less income, and not all have internet to take online courses, even if they wanted to do that. And I suspect not all of them know that they could benefit as much from this as they could. So my thought is, would it be possible to have a program for all of those folks out there who have opened up their homes to tourists through the Airbnb thing and other means that would really help them in their hospitality efforts? For example, if they had some expertise in local natural history, geology, flora, fauna, the natural science part of that. If they had some expertise in the history of Vermont as a whole and their area in particular, local music. I mean, there's such a wonderful local music scene here in the Northeast Kingdom. You know, if the jam people could be connected to the people who do such a wonderful job in music at the Johnson campus, local literature. If there were mini courses in this that could be delivered directly to the communities, that would the community would band together to pay for this. It would bring a little money, I would think, into NVU, and it would help the citizens economically, and also help their socially, you know, and culturally. And with the people coming in who are hearing this, hopefully it would have even longer geographical benefits, you know, to people from other states as well, who could begin to learn what, I mean, Vermont really has an exceptional ability to maintain local community, local democracy, etc. I mean, we could be teachers of that to the rest of the country. But that's it.
Hey, Dan. Quick question. Yeah, you're muted, but I'm just going to ask my question. If somebody wanted to sign up to speak at this point, how would they do that?
So right now I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 left. You know, we might be able to fit them in. Just have them send me a text. That would be great, and I will text them back the log on information. You got my number, right? Or do you want me to tell you? We may have too many, so we'll try to fit them in if we can keep this down. You know, so but let's see what we can do. So next up we have Cara. Cara, good morning. Welcome.
Good morning. So my name is Cara. Hi. It's okay. I'm a resident of Morrisville, and I am a staff at the Johnson campus for athletic and recreation. I work up at SHAPE facility, and I also for several years have run a youth swim team, and we rent the pool at the college, and we provide amazing, you know, connectivity throughout all of our wonderful towns. As you know, our towns don't have their own recreational facilities, and SHAPE has served that purpose. So I have two things I just wanted to bring up to the group, and I love hearing everybody's ideas, and I really appreciate being able to speak. One is an idea I can't really take credit for, but several of us who have been in a couple different Facebook groups have talked about the importance, and I think we're going to try to move forward on this, is starting kind of our own board, a mix of staff, students, faculty, community members, to kind of work in parallel, I hope, with the legislatures and the Board of Trustees, because I think there's so many ideas coming, and when I think of my time working on campus, you know, the administrators are really driving the college forward, and they're working really hard at that. And I think processing all of these ideas in the legislature, you know, you guys have a number of agendas that you're continuing to work forward with, and I think it's really going to be crucial that there's effective boards on campus with a mix of people, like Beth talked about, you know, a community, and everyone's talking about, how do I help? Where do I help process these ideas? And so I think it would be really crucial to have some type of board of, you know, whether we stick with the Secure the Future name, or we talk about, you know, Save VSC board. And, you know, I think there's room for debate about, is there a separate board per campus, and then members come together as a board from all campuses? Because I think what I've noticed as being a staff member in the last few years on campus is I'd love more partnership with what other campuses are doing in terms of, you know, where I'm at with recreation and providing services to students. We're a resource for each other, and I think this has brought home how much what we're doing is similar, and we need to keep that vein of thought moving forward. So that's one of my first ideas. I think, if we can offer that help. This idea came from Representative Felicia Loeffler, who worked as a student to help save her college down in Virginia, Sweetbriar, and that was her idea. And so I thought that was a great idea. The second thing I just wanted to talk about is I love the governor's concept of serving Vermonters, birth and to beyond. And I think recreation is a place where that can happen. Each of the college campuses has a shape facility with a pool and a gym and recreational space. And of course, we have beautiful outdoor space. And I just want to talk about a couple of the wonderful things that we've been doing up at Johnson. And I'd like to see those continue everywhere. And I think, we have swim lessons for youth. We have a huge senior population that comes in and use the facilities. We've done partnerships with Lamoille Family Center. We have memberships that the Department of Children and Family Services buy for their clients to come through Lamoille County Mental Health. I think that there's room for growth with this, connecting with rural transport, providing more transportation to our campuses. Transportation has definitely been a huge issue that I've heard about coming and using the facilities. What about more of a gerontology study on campus, in any of the campuses, working to provide more community programming for our aging population? Why do people move to communities? It's because they offer those extra things. And I think recreation is a huge piece of that we need to consider. And I think we can create space for people of all ages to come together. And when our young elementary school students and our high school students have those fond memories of being welcome to campus and being there for their sports camps and their lessons, using the rock wall, kids night out, those kind of programmings, it creates and fosters relationships of positive energy, like everyone's talking about, getting more of our local population to attend our Vermont State Colleges. And that's a huge piece of it. So I think I hit all my talking points. And again, I really appreciate this collaboration. So thank you.
All right, great. Thank you so much. You definitely raised some great points. Appreciate your input. That's awesome. Next up, we have Shane. Hey, welcome, Shane. How are you today?
Hey, great. Thanks, Dan. Thank you to everyone for putting this on and taking our input on this. So I did tune in late, and I apologize for that. I signed up a little late, so I may repeat some things that other people have said, but a couple of pretty kind of simple ideas that I have that I don't think are all encompassing and probably need to happen alongside a lot of other things. I've talked a little bit about this idea of having a Netflix model, and it sounds really simple, but the idea of making recorded and online classes very, very cheap and accessible to people so that more people can engage. A couple of people before me have talked about getting more Vermonters to be able to engage with the system that we have. And I think a way of doing that is by taking piecemeal courses and putting them online in the way we've seen a lot of other colleges on the national stage do. And then, you get more people to engage with the system in that way. But the other thing that I think I've seen, not my idea, one that I've seen pop up in the community a lot, is this idea of creating these rural Vermont State College hubs. And that is, I think, the thought is being, if the system decides we need to lower our footprint in some of these rural areas where we might not be getting as much enrollment out of them, and we might not have as much need for an in-person campus, to create these hubs, these rural hubs, where there's high-speed internet, where there are educational resources, where there are people who can guide an educational process there. And, maybe not necessarily teachers for every individual subject, but someone there who can help you out when you are there to work on things. And essentially setting these up in areas where we might not have the ability to, cover the state with a larger campus. So, again, they're kind of simple ideas. They are not all encompassing, and it's going to take a whole lot more to, figure this whole mess out. But I think those couple of pretty simple things, if pursued, could bring a lot more people into the state college system. And, combined with a couple ideas we heard before, lower membership fees for SHAPE and things like that, gets more people on campus, more people engaged, and hopefully more people going to those colleges. But thanks again for putting this on.
sorry, I got to click on mute. I always thank you so much for your input today. Definitely great to have you here. So next is Eric Osgood. Hey, good morning, Eric. Thanks for joining us this morning. We got about 15 minutes left, so we've got a couple more people, so let us have it. Thank you.
Okay, good morning, and thank you guys for all putting this on and keeping the conversation going. Just for full disclosure, I'm the chair of the select board in the town of Johnson, and I really have a strong bias here. I'm looking out for the NVU Johnson campus. That is a economic engine, as some people have talked about, for the community of Johnson. So I'm not only looking out for the college, I'm looking out to try to save the town of Johnson. The loss of that college would be tremendous. To echo what a lot of people have already said, the funding being the 50th in the nation for higher ed is not the place to be, obviously, and that needs to be increased. Working on increasing enrollment, the CCV move over to the campus, those are all things that should be considered and need to be considered. However, I think a lot of that is just tweaking what has been tried to be tweaked over the last number of years. And I think we've got to think and look a lot bigger than that. Unfortunately, from reading the landscape, I believe the bridge funding is going to become available to sustain or keep the colleges open for the time being. But if you look out further on the 2-year horizon, 3-year horizon, if the campus looks the same today in 2 years, then it's probably not going to survive. So I'm looking at or thinking along the lines of, we should look at a UVM model. They have a partnership with the hospital. It's hard when you go down there to see where the UVM campus ends and the hospital begins. It's such a seamless partnership. And I think that's a good model that we should be really looking at for up here on our campus. Developing a partnership with some kind of an industry, that having a business maybe on the campus, that the college could be used as a feeder into this industry and have internships working with the business. And also it could help with cost share. So it could reduce some of the costs of maintaining that whole campus. Looking along that kind of a line. And I want to talk, bring up about a friend of mine I went to school with. He's a high-end car restorer, and he specializes in Bugattis. He worked on the most expensive car in the world, a $50 million Bugatti. And that work was done right here in Vermont. And that's just one example of the cars he's worked on. He has the run of the mill are the $20 and $25 million vehicles he works on. Now, I'm not advocating that Johnson become a automotive technician school, but these little gold mines are right here in the hills of Vermont now, and we need to capitalize and develop partnerships with those little gold mines, because that would be a great feeder and a great way to keep the college sustainable. And I think that kind of out of the box thinking is what's going to have to be done for the future of the community college or the campus up there, and making it not only a sustainable, but essential. If we have that campus and college up there so essential for some technology, industry, business, that the state would never even consider closing it because it's just too valuable a resource. And that's a place where we got to get to. Mm-hmm. Obviously, this needs folks a lot smarter than me, but I think we need to think of this as an opportunity. We're probably being given a two-year window, and look at that as an opportunity to reform and change that campus to something that will be not just sustainable, but an essential element for the state as a whole, and they will not even ever consider closing it.
All right.
Like I said, I'm not smart enough, but there are people out there smart enough to figure this out.
Oh, that's not true, Eric. We're glad we got you on our team for sure. Definitely. Keep up the good work. You've been really instrumental in your Friday meetings and really keeping people up to date on what's going on up there. And it's definitely appreciated. We're all in it together. So thank you. Hey, next we have Greg Tatro. So Greg, we got like 10 minutes left just to be respectful of people's time. We got a couple more speakers that would like to talk. So you're on. Let's hear it.
Thank you guys. Thanks for doing this. I agree with Eric. He stole some of my thunder here, but it's good to see we're thinking alike. I do believe that we could bring business right on campus and have like workforce training, and these people could get their internships right on site, could walk across the campus and do their site. I would recommend we make some kind of a task force to reach out to any Fortune 500 companies, any companies in the world, and talk about this process. I think that would bring kids from all over the United States to come here if they knew they had a job with a good paying job that maybe they'd come out of school without much debt. My other thing I've been working on is I'd like everybody to go on the Hazleton Betty Ford. It's a recovery center, and what they do is they have family programs, children's programs, inpatient drug and alcohol treatment and counseling, and they also have a graduate school of addiction studies. And Johnson has already started with the psych program and addiction studies. But what we need, I think, to expand that program to bring more people in is probably some kind of an inpatient building right on site. So I don't know how many beds are empty up there, and if we could kind of separate it a little bit. But I think if we had people in a program and the school helping run the program, getting people so people could get their time in, that would be a pretty good model. 92.8% of the people who graduate from this school out there are employed and successful employment. They work on behavioral disorders, alcohol, drugs, all that. So I think that program they have could be expanded, and that would take some of the burden off the cost of running the college, because one building or however many they aren't using, we probably could fill up and get some income from.
Yeah.
So I think that's kind of where we're at here. But I would have, it'd be good if especially the senator and the representatives could check out the Hazleton Betty Ford model. And I think that could work in Johnson. They have 2 in New York and 1 in Boston. But, a lot of these city folks, they want to send their family members out to the country. And we already have, one of the things about recovery is you need a place to work out, to swim, to walk, to bike, all these things, and it's already there. Yeah. So it kind of lines right up pretty well. Mm-hmm. Thank you guys for doing this.
Thank you.
Taking the time.
Thank you for your input. We're definitely going to be needing to build those partnerships in order to move forward. And so good points, definitely. So it looks like our last person to speak today will be Ellen Hill. Appreciate you being here, Ellen. What do you think?
Thank you very much.
No, we hear you. We hear you.
I'm muted. You can hear me?
Yeah. We can see you too.
Okay, so you can hear me now.
Yep.
Okay. I put my timer on. Hello, everybody. I'm Ellen Hill. Thank you so much for this opportunity. I've been at Johnson State College in Northern Vermont University for 29 years and have had a lot of hats. Director of Center for Service Learning, started the nonprofit management certificate program, and currently am the internship coordinator. And I just want to say, I tallied up the data for the last 10 years, and we've put out 2,043 interns in our community for 456,000 hours. And we really value the businesses, for-profit, not-for-profit, public, and media to support the learning of our students. I wanted to take a few minutes just to talk about process. I've loved all the ideas I've heard from all of you, and there are just so many gems in there. But I have been a part of strategic planning for a lot of years, worked with the state of New Hampshire for economic opportunity, Delaware for solid waste, the town of Essex for economic development. And I think what has to happen is the context, the way to hold this is to get the most creative thinkers together at the table, maybe for 3 days, and to talk about what is our purpose, what is our scope, what can we really control, because I don't think we control the demographics of the decline of high school graduates, some of our assumptions about the funding that we'll get, the number of students we may retain, but really to identify the greatest problems we're experiencing, to rank those, and to flip those into objectives and create action plans with people attached to those action plans as the leaders, and they're responsible for getting the people who need to implement those ideas and make it actionable and empower the people who are actually trying to do the work. I totally agree with everybody that we need to work on seamless partnerships. I have worked with so many students, about 25% of interns actually get hired at their sites. But if there could be more strategic partnerships where students actually intern for, could be 3-6 credits, so 135 hours, 270 hours or more, and upon successful completion are hired at those sites. I love the fact that Johnson can be an incubator for businesses and really think strategically in community partnerships. But this really transcends higher ed. This has to go to economic opportunity and development with all of our partners and state and fed. So my timer just went off. I'll try to keep it at 3 minutes. I just want to say thank you very much. And I highly encourage that we support our students with paid internships rather than unpaid. So thank you all for the work you're doing, and I'm here to support as best as I can.
All right. Hey, thank you so much, Ellen. Some really good points there. And internships are definitely, the way to transition people from their college career into their life career. So thank you for all the work you're doing there. It's awesome. Hey, I have one more person after you, Ellen, who's I forgot and been texting back and forth with Dolan here. So we're gonna get Amber in here real quick. So Amber, looks like you get the last word, and thank you so much for being here.
Well, thank you guys for doing this. Good morning. I want to just note you to know that I'm speaking from the perspective of a parent, as a parent of 2 NVU students and a high schooler. I'm also an educator, a resident of Johnson, and I've been a 20-year co-worker of many NVU interns and graduates. So I have a lot of different perspectives. First, I think the first thing we need to do is demonstrate that we've landed on solid ground. So I appreciate the bridge funding. I think it needs to be a 5-year bridge funding, where we are working in partnership with the legislature for funding, representation, and sort of building out the new college system. The current students at NVU have experienced 3 sort of crisis moments, and so we need to definitely reassure them. Advisors need to be calling their students and talking voice to voice. The second speaks more to how do we get students connected to NVU, and that looks at expanding how the pre and post attendance at NVU. So working with the AOE and through alternative pathways to expand the dual enrollment opportunities, both going into schools, local high schools, to increase the number of contacts for dual enrollment, collaborating with their teachers, offering dual enrollment opportunities on NVU and BTC campuses during the summer. The second is kind of a newer idea, and it would be looking at how do we use sort of the extra spaces on the campuses, and thinking about the idea of creating an ambassador co-op. So that would be exchanging housing, affordable housing, and also meeting some of the food insecurities that people in our state experience. So graduates, interns could apply for housing, living on campus while they're using their careers or using their degrees to start their professional careers, and reaching out into the communities to establish themselves. In exchange, they would work on like outreach, phone-a-thons, college fairs, mentoring, and employment panels. That's sort of my quick thoughts around that. How do we extend the connect with campuses from 4 to 6 years to 10 years and beyond? Again, and I think there's a lot of talk about overhauling the system, so I don't want to like keep going there, but there definitely needs to be a lot of work done there on how to make it transparent across the state that we are all connected.
Great. Thank you so much. Great to see you today. And thank you for taking the time to join us this morning. Awesome. So we're kind of wrapping up here. I know that I think Senator Westman may want to say some closing remarks here, and then we'll see where else it goes. So thank you, Senator.
This is more of a comment. I've heard a number of people through this call this bridge funding. Please don't do that. This is funding to make the place sustainable. And if we're going to get the message out that we're here for the long haul, it needs to be talked about as sustainable funding for the long haul, not bridge funding. I think we just took a real heavy shot because people questioned whether or not the system was going to be there because of everything that's just happened. And we need to talk about this as sustainable funding for the long term.
Thank you. Yeah, very important words for sure. And Representative Rogers, would you like to say a few words here?
Yeah, thanks, Dan. I just wanted to let everybody know that I've been taking extensive notes throughout this whole process, and I've been working with some of the legislative leadership on setting up a place where all state representatives can post the ideas that their constituents are sending them, and then it will be should be by early next week published publicly on the Speaker of the House's website and updated regularly. So I will be adding these ideas to that page, and I just wanted to share as I was taking notes, there were kind of 5 themes that came out of what everybody said that I wanted to share. So the first was to market the strengths of the state schools that we have. The second was to work towards the colleges taking a more central role in our community and developing partnerships with the community. The third was leveraging programs that fill important community needs and more partnerships with businesses in that way. Fourth was using campus spaces in innovative ways, whether that's partnering with community colleges, recreation, housing. And then the fifth was thinking about different ways to administer the Vermont State Colleges, including enhanced roles of college presidents and leveraging local expertise. So I just wanted to do a quick recap of everything we heard. And then also, I know that NVU also has a place to collect ideas, which was posted in the comments. But for those of you on YouTube, it's northernvermont.edu/strong. So keep sending your ideas there and send them to your state reps. And thank you.
Great. Thank you, Lucy. Appreciate it. Representative Hill?
Sure. Thanks. Thanks everyone for coming out. I think it's important to mention that, it almost seems a bit of a war right now. We won a battle. It was a small battle. It made possibly the Battle of Bennington equivalent. But we did it. We won that one step. But we got to keep our eye on the prize. Our next objectives, are secure funding, keep it going, and make sure that we are, kind of all on the same page as far as moving forward. The next objective is essentially to secure funding long term. I'll just like to say too about campuses. I heard it brought up once. I think Anne Marie, you might have brought it up. Online is great for some students, and it's fine. When I went back to college, I tried a few online courses, and it wasn't my thing. And I actually tried it 3 different times, thinking I could still do it, and it never worked out for me. So face-to-face is extremely important for many students, especially if you're in a critical thinking, and especially if you had some of the professors that we have at Johnson. Critical thinking is of the utmost importance, and you lose that. So in other words, maintaining a physical campus is very important. You're going to lose a lot of students if students like me, for example, if we don't have a physical campus. So that's all I have to say is, let's keep the pressure on, let's keep working hard, and we've only gone one step. We've got quite a few more. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Matt. Hey, I just got a note that Tommy Gardner would like to say a word or two. So I'm just going to open it up to him real quick here, and then we'll wrap up. And I really appreciate everybody. So Tommy, what do you think?
Morning. Thanks, guys, for hosting this. Just a quick pitch. As some of you know, we've hosted organized at the News and Citizen debates between candidates in every election year since I've been there, since 2014, and they've been fairly successful. I think we've held them at PA, we've held them at Lamoille, and we've held them at Stowe High. I think that Johnson State College will be a natural fit. So I don't know if there's anybody still in here. I saw Leah left, but if there's anybody at the college or anybody who would like to just send me a note and how we could go about once we all can congregate together, whether it be a primary or general election debates, we'd love to do it at Johnson.
All right. Thank you, Tommy. Okay. Thank you, everyone. Really appreciate it. Thank you so much for being here today. And we will be back having this conversation, I'm sure, for the rest of the year. So
Hey,
thank you.
Dan,
Yeah.
Quick thing. I think for the